In the village square, lights flicker as if announcing a celebration. But it's not a celebration, it's an auction. A 17-year-old girl with an empty gaze is placed before drunken men. No one reacts until an Apache man breaks the silence. Mounted, he takes the girl and disappears into the forest. The pursuit begins, but what happens afterward transforms more than one life. Watch until the end and discover the story that confronted an entire tradition. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. The square of Cerrado das Almas gleamed under the yellowish brightness of the lanterns, transforming what should have been a local festivity into something somber and threatening. Donna Joanna nervously adjusted Iracema's dress, a 17-year-old girl whose black eyes were fixed on the beaten earth ground as if finding refuge there. "Stay still, girl, and don't make me ashamed. This is your chance to be useful for something in this life, since you have neither father nor mother to care for you," whispered the stepmother, squeezing the young woman's arm with enough force to leave marks. Iracema didn't respond. Since the fever that had taken her mother away 3 years ago, she had learned that words rarely changed her destiny. The auctioneer, a man with a thick mustache and worn suit, cleared his throat as farmers and merchants approached, forming a semicircle in front of the small improvised platform. "Gentlemen, today we have something special to offer," he announced, gesturing theatrically. "A skilled, healthy, and obedient young woman, perfect for managing a house or helping with farm chores. Who makes the first bid?" Iracema felt her stomach turn when the first value was shouted by a middle-aged farmer, Colonel Jeremias, known for his violent temperament and the stories that circulated about how he treated employees on his property. 50,000 rays, he shouted, his eyes running over the young woman's body from top to bottom. Soon others joined in, raising the offer in a dispute that seemed to extract invisible pieces of Iracema's dignity. They said it was tradition in the region, a matrimonial arrangement for orphaned girls or from families without resources, but everyone knew the truth. It was an auction disguised as a social agreement, where women were sold to the highest bidder. At the edge of the crowd, observing with attentive eyes, was Kawa, a man of approximately 30 years, whose brown skin and marked features revealed his Pataxo ancestry. He had come to the village to trade handicrafts for supplies when he encountered the scene that was now unfolding. Something deep and ancestral awakened in his chest, an indignation that his ancestors would feel when witnessing such a violation of the sacred principles of life. 200,000 reais, and let's not speak of it anymore, shouted Colonel Jeremias, silencing the other competitors. The auctioneer smiled, satisfied. 200,000 reais once, 200,000 reais twice. Before he could finalize, an abrupt movement interrupted the ritual. Kawa advanced through the crowd, his decisive steps opening a path among the drunk men. "This is not right," he declared, his firm voice cutting through the murmur of the square. For a moment, silence reigned. The auctioneer recovered from the initial shock and frowned. "Who are you to interrupt village affairs? Go back to your tribe, Indian." The nervous laughter that followed was interrupted when Kawa climbed onto the platform with a single, agile movement. His eyes met Iracema's, transmitting a silent message that she somehow understood. "No woman should be sold like cattle," he stated, and without further words, took the young woman's hand. Donna Joanna screamed, trying to prevent it, but Kawa had already helped Iracema descend from the platform. Colonel Jeremias, red with fury, advanced toward him. "You will pay for this audacity, savage!" Kawa did not respond. Instead, he pulled Iracema with him toward the exit of the square, moving quickly among the confused people. "Stop them, thief, kidnapper!" screamed Donna Joanna, while Colonel Jeremias ordered his henchmen to pursue them. But Kawa knew every alley and trail in the region. Born in the Pataxo village near the town, he had grown up exploring the territory between the two worlds. "Duty. You trust me?" he asked the young woman when they reached the edge of the forest that surrounded the village. Iracema hesitated for only a second. She looked back at the lights of the square where she would be sold, and then back to the man in front of her. "I trust you," she answered, surprising herself with her own certainty. Kawa nodded, taking her hand again. "Then run." They crossed the dense forest, guided only by the moonlight that filtered through the foliage. Irasema occasionally stumbled in her dress, but Kawa supported her, patient and firm. Behind them, they could hear shouts and the noise of branches being broken by the pursuers. When they reached a small clearing, Kawa whistled, perfectly imitating the song of a nocturnal bird. Seconds later, 2 horses emerged from the shadows, led by a young APACHE, not much older than Irasema. "Yasi, we need to return to the village now," said Kawa in his native language. The young man looked curiously at Irasema, but asked no questions. He helped her mount one of the horses while Kawa climbed onto the other. "The men from the village are following us," explained Kawa. "We need to mislead them." Jasi nodded, quickly disappearing among the trees. "He will create false trails," explained Kawa to Irasema. "Now let's go, we still have a long way ahead." They rode for hours, following trails invisible to untrained eyes, crossing streams to confuse the trail, and finally, when the sky began to lighten, they sighted the APACHE village on top of a verdant hill. Irasema had never been so far from home. In fact, she had never left the limits of the village. She observed, amazed, the huts organized in a circle, with a large central structure where, even at that hour, people were already moving about. Kawa slowed down, bringing his horse closer to hers. "My people are not accustomed to visitors from the village," he explained. "I will take you directly to Elder Jurema. She will decide what to do." Irasema nodded, unable to articulate words before the magnitude of what had happened in the last few hours. When they entered the village, several people stopped their activities to observe them. Murmurs in a language Irasema did not understand spread quickly. Kawa dismounted and helped her do the same, then walking toward one of the larger huts decorated with colorful symbols painted by hand. An elderly woman emerged from the entrance, her gray hair braided with colorful beads and feathers. Her eyes, dark and penetrating, analyzed Irasema from head to toe before turning to Kawa. "What does this mean, my son?" she asked in Portuguese, her voice surprisingly strong for someone of her age. Kawa reported the events in the village, omitting no details. He described the auction, the way Irasema was treated, his decision to intervene. When he finished, Elder Jurema remained silent for long moments. "Do you know what you've done?" she finally asked. "They will come after her. You will put the entire village in danger." Kawa remained firm. "I couldn't leave her there, Mother. What they were doing to her violates everything we've been taught about respect for life." Jurema sighed, then turning to Irasema. "And you, girl, what do you desire? Do you want to return to your village?" Irasema felt the weight of that question. Returning would mean being handed over to Colonel Jeremias, or worse, being punished for the scandal she had caused. She remembered the empty life she led under Donna Joanna's roof, the daily abuses, the absence of prospects. "I don't want to go back," she finally answered, her voice almost a whisper. "If you allow me to stay, I will do whatever is necessary, not to be a burden." Jurema studied her for a few more moments before nodding. "I will speak with the council. Until then, you will be under Kawa's responsibility, since it was he who brought you." She then turned to her son. "The men from the village will come soon. Prepare yourself." When Jurema walked away, Kawa led Irasema to his own hut. "Rest a little," he suggested, indicating a woven straw mat. "I'll bring water and food." Irasema nodded, suddenly conscious of the fatigue that dominated her body. When Kawa left, she allowed herself to collapse onto the mat, tears finally finding a path down her face. She didn't know if she cried from relief, fear, or gratitude, only knew that something fundamental had changed in her life that night. Outside, the sun was rising completely, bathing the village in golden light, as if announcing that, despite the dangers that would certainly come, a new day had begun. Irasema woke up hours later, disoriented, her body aching from the night ride. She sat up on the mat, trying to organize her thoughts, when she noticed a small figure standing at the entrance of the hut. It was a child of approximately 5 years, with big, curious eyes and a small, colorful feather attached to his hair. The boy observed her intensely, holding a small toy bow. "Hello," said Irasema, softening her voice. The little one didn't respond, just continued staring at her with childish curiosity. Before she could try again, Kawa appeared behind the child, carrying a clay bowl and a gourd with water. "I see you've met Rayoni," he commented, smiling at the boy. "He lost his parents in the last rainy season. A fever took many of our people." Irasema felt a tightness in her chest, recognizing in that child the same pain she carried. "Does he live with you?" she asked, accepting the bowl that Kawa offered her. It was full of a mixture of fruits and cooked roots that, despite the strange appearance, had an inviting aroma. "He is cared for by the entire village," explained Kawa, sitting beside the boy and stroking his hair. "But yes, he spends a lot of time here. I think he sees me as an older brother." Irasema smiled at the child, who finally returned the gesture timidly. "The council met while you slept," continued Kawa, his tone more serious. "They decided that you can stay at least until we understand what the men from the village intend to do." He hesitated before continuing. Jasi returned a short while. "Ago. He says there is a group of Colonel Jeremiah's henchmen scouring the region, led by your stepmother." Irasema shuddered. She knew well Donna Joanna's determination, especially when it involved money. "How much would he pay for me?" she asked, her voice laden with bitterness. 200,000 rays, a fortune by local standards," replied Kawa. "Your stepmother will not give up easily." At that moment, Rayoni approached Irasema, offering her a small wildflower that he apparently had been keeping. The simple gesture brought tears to the young woman's eyes, who accepted the gift with an emotional smile. "Thank you," she whispered, gently touching the child's face. Kawa observed the scene with a thoughtful expression. "Come," he said finally, standing up. "My mother wants to speak with you, and afterward there is much work to do. If you're going to stay with us, you need to learn our customs." In the days that followed, Irasema was gradually introduced to life in the APACHE village. She learned to recognize medicinal plants with Elder Jurima, to weave straw to make mats and baskets, to prepare traditional foods. Little Raoni became her constant shadow, following her wherever she went, offering her small treasures he found. A colorful feather, a shiny stone, an especially sweet fruit. The communication between them transcended words, based on gestures, looks, and smiles. The child's presence brought Irasema a sense of purpose she had never known before. At night, around the central fire, she heard stories from the elders, legends about the creation of the world, about the spirits of the forest, about the sacred connection between all forms of life. Gradually, she began to understand that she had found not just refuge, but a new way of existing, where her value was not measured by money or utility, but by her intrinsic humanity. Kawa observed her adaptation with a mixture of admiration and concern. One afternoon, as they walked along the bank of the river that serpentined near the village, he finally expressed his fears. "The men from the village are still searching," he said, throwing a stone that skipped several times over the surface of the water. "Yesterday they reached the border of our lands." Irasema felt a chill run down her spine. "What will happen if they find me?" Kawa looked toward the horizon, where the sun was beginning to set. "My people have decided to protect you. We will not surrender you." His gaze met hers. "But I fear the consequences. Colonel Jeremiah has influence even in the capital. He can bring serious problems to the village." Irasema lowered her eyes, feeling the weight of guilt. "Maybe I should leave, go far away where they can't find me or harm you." Kawa gently held her arm. "And where would you go?" "A woman alone, without resources, without protection." He shook his head. "No, Irasema. Your place now is here with us." Before she could respond, they were interrupted by shouts coming from the village. They ran back, finding a group of APACHE warriors gathered around Hasi, who seemed exhausted and agitated. "They are coming," he announced when he saw Kawa. "Colonel Jeremiah, the stepmother, and at least 10 armed men. They are less than an hour away." A worried murmur ran through the crowd. Elder Jurema raised her hands, asking for silence. "Prepare to receive them," she ordered. "Hide the children and women in the prayer house. Kawa, take Irasema there too." Kawa nodded, but Irasema remained motionless. "No," she said firmly. "I will not hide while you face danger because of me." Jurema studied her for a moment, something like respect shining in her ancient eyes. "As you wish, daughter, but stay by my side." The sun was already setting when the horses were heard approaching. Colonel Jeremias led the group, his face red, with barely contained rage. At his side, Donna Joanna, with a severe and calculating expression. The henchmen kept a few steps behind, hands on their weapons, distrustful looks. The Pataxo received them in formation, men in front, elders in the center, Irasema beside Jurema, Kawa close to both. "We've come to fetch what belongs to us," declared the colonel, dismounting. His eyes found Irasema among the indigenous people, the girl and the savage who stole her. Jurema took a step forward, her small stature contrasting with her imposing presence. "Nothing was stolen, white man. The young woman is here of her own will." Donna Joanna let out a disdainful laugh. "She is a minor and under my guardianship. She has no right to choose." She advanced toward Irasema, but was barred by the Pataxo warriors. "You received money for her," intervened Kawa. "That is not guardianship, it's trafficking." Colonel Jeremias put his hand on the revolver at his waist. "Be careful with your words, Indian. I can easily get authorization to remove this entire village from the land you occupy." The threat hung in the air like poisonous smoke. Irasema felt the weight of the consequences of her presence there. People could be hurt, an entire community could lose their home. She stepped forward, ignoring Kawa's warning look. "I will go with you," she declared, surprising everyone. "With one condition, leave the village in peace." Donna Joanna smiled triumphantly, while the colonel visibly relaxed his posture. "Irasema, no," whispered Kawan, trying to reach her. She moved away, avoiding his touch. "It's the only way, Kawa. I cannot allow you to suffer because of me." She began to walk toward her stepmother, each step weighing like lead. It was then that an unexpected sound cut through the tense air. The cry of a child. Raoni had escaped from the prayer house and was running toward Irasema, his small arms extended, tears rolling down his face. "Pira! Pira!" he shouted in his native language. Fish, the affectionate nickname he had given to Irasema, for the way her eyes shone in the firelight. Irasema knelt, hugging the boy tightly. "Shh, it's all right, little one," she murmured against his hair. "I'll come back for you, I promise." But they both knew it was an empty promise. Colonel Jeremias observed the scene with contempt. "Let's end this now," he said, impatient. "The girl comes with us now, or we'll return with more men and official orders for the evacuation of the lands." Jurema raised her voice, surprisingly strong for her advanced age. "We have 3 days of sacred celebration starting tomorrow. During this period, no one can enter or leave the village. It is the law of the ancients, respected even by the rulers of your capital." It was a lie, all the Pataxo knew, but told with such conviction that even the colonel hesitated. 3 days, then," he finally conceded. "After that, either the girl returns with us voluntarily, or we'll return with enough force to take what is ours." With that, he mounted his horse, making a gesture for his men to follow him. Donna Joanna cast a last venomous look at Irasema. "You will regret every day you spent with these savages, girl, this I guarantee." When the group finally departed, a heavy silence fell over the village. Irasema remained kneeling, Raoni still in her arms, his small body trembling with fear. Kawa approached, kneeling beside them. "Why did you say you would go with them?" he asked, his voice a mixture of pain and confusion. Irasema raised her eyes to him, silent tears running down her face. "Because you are the first real family I've ever had, and sometimes protecting family means making sacrifices." Jurema approached, placing a wrinkled hand on Irasema's shoulder. "We have 3 days," she declared. 3 days to find a solution that doesn't require your sacrifice, daughter." That night, as the village retreated into an uneasy sleep, Irasema remained awake, Raoni asleep in her arms. She observed the stars through the small hole at the top of the hut, thinking about how her life had changed so drastically in such a short time. She had found a home only to realize that she might have to abandon it to protect it. Tomorrow brought with it a countdown, 3 days before she would have to make the most difficult choice of her life. Time slipped away like water between fingers, while in the darkness of night, plans and strategies began to be woven like the nets that the APACHE fishermen cast into the river, hoping to capture not fish, but a chance of future for all of them. The village awoke before the sun on the first of the 3 days granted by Colonel Jeremias. An extraordinary council was convened, gathering not only the elders, but all the adults of the community. Irachema was invited to sit in the central circle, a place of honor rarely offered to outsiders. Jerima opened the discussion, her voice carrying the weight of wisdom accumulated over decades of leadership. We are faced with a difficult choice, my people. Protecting this young woman means challenging powerful men who have long desired our lands. Surrendering her is yielding to an evil that violates our most sacred principles. A murmur ran through the circle. One of the older warriors stood up. We have fought for less in the past. Our land, our customs, our dignity have always been worth the risk. Others expressed agreement, but there were also voices of caution. What if they come with soldiers, with papers from the capital? We could lose everything, including the ability to help others in the future, argued a middle-aged woman. The debate extended for hours, while Irachema listened in silence, her heart heavy with the responsibility she felt. It was Kawa who finally proposed a solution. There is a path that requires neither her departure nor our submission, he declared, looking directly at Irachema. According to the laws of the whites, a 17-year-old woman cannot decide her own destiny, but, he made a significant pause, a married woman can. The silence that followed was almost palpable. Jerima was the first to understand. You suggest a marriage, my son? Kawa nodded, his gaze still fixed on Irachema. If she agrees to be my wife, according to our traditions and the laws of the whites, neither her stepmother nor the colonel will have rights over her. Irachema felt the blood rise to her face. The proposal was pragmatic, a legal solution to her dilemma, but it also carried emotional implications she had not considered before. She noticed that everyone was observing her, waiting for her reaction. I need to think, she finally responded, standing up and leaving the circle. She walked to the riverbank, her refuge in moments of reflection. She sat on a flat stone, observing the water that ran incessantly, carrying leaves and small branches with it, just as time carried away certainties and brought new possibilities. She perceived soft steps approaching and didn't need to turn to know it was Kawa. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you, he said, sitting beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. The proposal was unexpected, she answered, still looking at the water. But I understand the logic. Kawa breathed deeply. It's not just logic. Irachema. He paused, seeking the right words. Since I brought you to the village, something changed in me. The way Raoni approached you, how you learned our customs, how you faced the colonel without fear. You have the spirit of a APACHE. Finally, she turned to face him. Would it be a real marriage or just on paper? Kawa held her gaze. As real as you wish it to be. We can start as friends, as partners in a necessary alliance. The rest time will tell. Irachema thought about her life in the village, the limited expectations she had for her future there. She remembered the sense of belonging she had found among the APACHE, Raoni's affection, the respect with which she was treated. I accept, she said finally. But I need you to understand, it's not just for protection. It's because here, for the first time, I feel that I can choose my own path. Kawa smiled, a smile that illuminated his eyes. It's all I can ask for. When they returned to the village, they announced their decision. Jerima ordered that preparations for the wedding begin immediately. It will be held tomorrow at sunset, she declared, and on the third day when the colonel returns, it will be concluded according to both traditions. A man named Ubirajara, who served as an intermediary between the village and the town, was sent to fetch the priest from the small church of Cerrado das Almas. He is a just man, explained Jurema to Irachema, one of the few who respects our people. He will perform the ceremony according to the customs of the whites and officially register the union. The second day dawned with intense activity in the Oi village. Women prepared special foods, men hunted and fished for the banquet, children collected flowers and colorful seeds for decorations. Irasema was taken by a group of women to an isolated part of the river where she participated in a purification ritual. Her body was bathed with waters perfumed with herbs, her hair braided with colorful ribbons and small flowers. Her traditional APACHE dress, made especially for her, replaced her village clothes, a symbol of her transition to a new life. While the women prepared her, they shared stories and advice about conjugal life, some practical, others mystical. Irasema listened to everything with a mixture of nervousness and hope. Raoni did not leave her side during the entire day, helping in his way, bringing small gifts and observing the preparations with wondrous eyes. "Will you be my mother now?" he asked unexpectedly when they were alone for a moment. The question hit Irasema like an arrow straight to the heart. She knelt before the boy, holding his small hands in hers. "If you want me to be, little Raoni, nothing would make me happier." The smile that illuminated the child's face was like a seal on a sacred pact between them. At dusk, Ubirajara returned accompanied by Father Antonio, a middle-aged man with a graying beard and gentle eyes. To Irasema's surprise, he treated her with respect and without judgments. "Ubirajara explained the situation to me," he said in a low voice. "What Donna Joanna and the Colonel plan to do is an abomination in the eyes of God. I am here to help, not to judge." The APACHE ceremony began at sunset. The entire village gathered in a circle around the central fire. Jurema conducted the rituals, invoking the blessing of the ancestors and the spirits of nature. Kawa and Irasema exchanged promises in Portuguese and in the APACHE language, sealing their commitment with a bracelet of braided fibers and seeds that he placed on her wrist, and a necklace of shells that she placed around his neck. When the first star appeared in the sky, Father Antonio performed the Catholic ceremony, adapted to respect the traditions already observed. Documents were signed by the light of the fire, witnessed by Jurema, Ubirajara, and other respected members of the community. "It is done," declared the priest finally. "Before God and the law, you are now husband and wife." The celebration that followed lasted until late in the night. There was music, dance, stories, and laughter. Irasema, for the first time in her life, felt truly part of something greater than herself. A community that accepted her not for her utility, but for her essence. When they finally retired, Kawa led her not to his usual hut, but to a new one, rapidly constructed in the last days by the men of the village. It was simple but welcoming, with new mats, ceramic utensils, and baskets woven by the women as wedding gifts. "This is our home now," he said, a slight nervousness in his usually confident voice. "Yours and mine, and Raoni's, if we so wish." As if invoked by his words, the boy appeared at the entrance of the hut, hesitant. "Can I sleep here tonight?" he asked timidly. Irasema and Kawa exchanged a look of mutual understanding. "Of course you can, little one," answered Kawa, extending his hand to the child. That night the three slept side by side, an improvised family born of necessity, but cultivated by the genuine affection that grew between them. On the morning of the third day, the tension was palpable in the village. Everyone knew that Colonel Jeremias would return, probably with more men and redoubled determination. Father Antonio remained, his presence offering both spiritual comfort and legal legitimacy for what they had done. "They will respect the law of the church if they do not respect that of the indigenous," he assured, although his look betrayed concern. Shortly after midday, the sentinel announced the approach of horsemen. As predicted, the group was larger this time. The colonel, Donna Joanna, and at least 20 armed men. Some carried torches, a clear sign of their intentions should they encounter resistance. The APACHE organized themselves as on the previous day, but this time Irasema was beside Kawa, their fingers intertwined, the ritual bracelet visible on her wrist. Father Antonio positioned himself near them, the marriage documents in hand. Colonel Jeremias dismounted, his gaze alternating between anger and distrust upon seeing the priest. "What does this mean?" he demanded. Donna Joanna advanced, her eyes fixed on Iracema. "We've come for the girl as agreed. The 3 days are over." It was the priest who responded, his voice calm but firm. "Mrs. Iracema is no longer under your guardianship, Donna Joanna. She is now a married woman, according to civil law and the church." He presented the documents, which the colonel snatched from his hands, examining them with disbelief. "This is a farce, a trick to steal what belongs to me by right," Donna Joanna hissed, her face contorted with fury. "That ungrateful after. All I did for her." Iracema finally spoke, her clear voice cutting through the tense air. "The only thing you did for me, stepmother, was to sell me as if I were cattle. Here I found what I never had with you: respect, dignity, and love." She squeezed Kawa's hand more firmly. "I am a Pataxo now. This is my family, my people, my home." The colonel crumpled the documents in his hand, throwing them to the ground. "This doesn't end here. I have enough influence to annul this supposed marriage. And as for you, father, the diocese will know of your involvement with these savages." The priest was not intimidated. "Do what you think necessary, Colonel. I am at peace with my conscience and with God." For a tense moment, it seemed that the colonel would order an attack. His men were awaiting only a signal, hands on their weapons. It was Raoni who, unconsciously, changed the course of events. The boy escaped from the group of children and ran to Iracema, clinging to her skirt, looking with fear at the threatening strangers. The image of the young woman with the child clinging to her, beside her indigenous husband, and supported by the priest, created a powerful tableau that even the colonel hesitated to destroy. "Let's go," he finally ordered, to everyone's surprise. "They're not worth the trouble they would cause." He mounted his horse, casting a last venomous look at the group. "But don't think I'll forget this. These lands have an owner, and one day you will learn this in the hardest way." Donna Joanna seemed to want to protest, but a severe look from the colonel silenced her. Reluctantly, she mounted her horse and followed the group that was already moving away. The silence endured until the last horseman disappeared on the trail leading to the village. Then, as if an invisible dam had broken, shouts of joy and relief exploded in the village. Iracema was lifted in Kawa's arms, spinning in celebration while Raoni jumped around them laughing. The threat had not completely disappeared, everyone knew that. The colonel's final words hung like a dark cloud on the horizon, but for now, they had achieved a significant victory, not just for Iracema, but for the dignity of all. That night, as the village celebrated again, Iracema found a moment to be alone with Jurema. The elder smiled, observing the happiness around. "You brought something special to our village, daughter," she said, taking Iracema's hands in hers. "Not just a new member for our family, but a reminder of the value of our principles." Iracema felt tears in her eyes. "You gave me a new life, Mother Jurema. How can I repay you?" The elder pointed to Raoni, who was playing with other children near the fire. "Care for him, teach him, and one day, when other young women in danger need help, remember this moment and extend your hand to them as we extended ours to you." Iracema nodded solemnly, understanding that what had begun as her personal salvation had transformed into something greater, a commitment to a way of life, to values that transcended the boundaries between village and town, between peoples and traditions. The night advanced, bringing with it not just the end of the third day, but the beginning of a new count, no longer regressive toward a feared end, but progressive toward a future built day by day with one's own hands and heart. 5 years passed since that night of decision in the Pataxo village. Iracema, now 22 years old, walked along the trail that bordered the river, Raoni at her side. The boy, who had turned 10 at the last full moon, proudly carried a small fish he had caught alone. "Look, mother, this one is bigger than yesterday's," he exclaimed, raising his conquest. Iracema smiled, stroking the son's hair. "You're getting better than your father," she commented with genuine pride. Rauni had begun to call her mother naturally, shortly, after the wedding, and the title had warmed her heart since the first time. She observed the boy running ahead, his inexhaustible energy, his free spirit. It seemed impossible that so much time had passed since she arrived at the village, fleeing from a destiny imposed by others. Life with the Pataxo had not always been easy. Colonel Jeremias, as promised, had not forgotten the humiliation. In the first 2 years, he had sent government representatives with documents questioning the legitimacy of the indigenous lands. He had tried to bribe officials to invalidate Irachima and Kawa's marriage. He had spread rumors in the village about dangerous practices in the indigenous village, trying to incite the population against them. But each obstacle faced had only strengthened the community's bonds. Father Antonio had become an invaluable ally, using his influence in the diocese to protect the village's interests. Ubirajara had expanded his connections with merchants in neighboring villages, establishing alternative routes for selling Pataxo handicrafts when the colonel tried to block their access to the local market. Iracema herself had discovered an unexpected talent that had become vital for the village, the ability to transit between two worlds. Her basic education in the town, combined with traditional Pataxo knowledge, allowed her to act as a translator and mediator. She learned to read official documents, to negotiate with merchants, to identify manipulation attempts. Gradually, she became known in the region as the Bridge, someone who understood both the codes of white society and indigenous values. Kawa observed her development with growing admiration. The marriage, initiated as a pragmatic solution, had blossomed into a deep partnership based on mutual respect and eventually love. They worked side by side in daily tasks, consulted each other in important decisions, shared dreams and concerns in the quiet nights in their hut. When, 3 years after their union, Iracema gave birth to a girl, the family circle was completed. Little Jandira, now 2 years old, was the joy of the village, mixing in her delicate features the heritage of two peoples. Her large dark eyes, like her mother's, contrasted with the copper-colored skin and straight black hair of her father. Raoni had assumed with seriousness his role as older brother, fiercely protecting her and filling her with small treats he collected in his adventures. Jurema, now older but still respected as the main guardian of tribal wisdom, dedicated herself especially to her granddaughter, transmitting to her stories and teachings that kept alive the collective memory of the Pataxo. In the town, things had also changed. Donna Joanna, unable to bear the shame for the failure to sell her stepdaughter, had left for the state capital shortly after Iracema's wedding, never returning. Colonel Jeremias, although still powerful, faced the growing resistance of a new generation of residents, less willing to accept his absolute dominion. Times were changing, slowly but inexorably. The very vision of indigenous peoples was beginning to transform, with new protection laws being discussed in distant capitals. Iracema was torn from her thoughts by Jasi's urgent call, now one of the main warriors of the village. "Iracema, Kawa sent for you. There are important visitors in the village." She hurried her pace, Rauni at her side, curiosity stamped on his young face. Upon arriving at the center of the village, they found a small group of people gathered with Kawam and other leaders. To her surprise, she recognized among them Father Antonio and a young woman she had never seen before. The girl could not have been more than 16, her frightened eyes and defensive posture painfully reminding Iracema of herself years ago. "This is Iracema of whom I spoke to you," introduced Kawa when she approached. He then turned to his wife. "We have a situation that needs your wisdom, my companion." Father Antonio took the floor, his grave voice carrying the weight of urgency. "This is Teresa," he said, indicating the young woman. "Her story is familiar." In the hours that followed, in a meeting in the sacred council space, Iracema heard the story of young Teresa, an orphan like her raised by an uncle who now planned to hand her over to a cattle farmer in exchange for gambling debts. The story was repeating itself, with new names but the same fundamental disrespect for human dignity. "Father Antonio told me about you," said Teresa timidly. "About how you found a home here, about how you became free." Her eyes silently implored for a similar solution. Iracema looked at Kawa, finding in his gaze the same determination she had seen that night in the square of Cerrado das Almas. Jurema, who observed in silence, nodded imperceptibly. "Our village has always been a refuge for those seeking dignity," declared Kawa to the assembled council. 5 years ago, we welcomed Iracema. Today she is one of us, a APACHE in heart and spirit, mother of our children, guardian of our traditions as much as anyone born here. He made a significant pause. "I propose that we offer young Teresa the same refuge." A murmur of approval ran through the circle. Iracema felt a warmth expanding in her chest. The cycle was completing itself. What had begun as her personal rescue was now transforming into a legacy, a tradition of welcoming that transcended her own story. Before they could continue the discussion, however, a young warrior burst into the council space, breathless. "News from the town," he announced, addressing Kawa. "Colonel Jeremiah suffered an accident. His horse threw him during a hunt. He is bedridden, severely injured." The news was received with surprised expressions. For years, the colonel had represented the greatest threat to the village, the visible face of the oppression they tried to combat. His sudden vulnerability seemed unreal. "There is more," continued the messenger. "He asks to see Iracema. He said it is urgent, that he has something important to say before—" He left the phrase incomplete, but the meaning was clear. The silence that followed was heavy. All eyes turned to Iracema, who felt the weight of the decision on her shoulders. The man who had almost destroyed her life now asked for her presence at his possible deathbed. The instinctive response was to refuse, to protect herself from a last blow or manipulation, but something deeper spoke in her heart. "I will go see him," she finally declared, "not for him but for us, so that any shadow of the past can finally be dissipated." Kawa held her hand. "I will go with you." Father Antonio added, "I will too. My presence might be useful in various ways." They left Raoni and Jandira in Jurema's care and departed immediately for the town, accompanied by 4 APACHE warriors as escort. Young Teresa remained in the village, protected and safe, at least temporarily. Colonel Jeremiah's big house in the center of town was silent when they arrived at dusk. They were received by his niece Mariana, a middle-aged woman who administered his business. To Iracema's surprise, she treated them with respect without the expected hostility. "He is waiting," she said simply, leading them to the main bedroom. Colonel Jeremias, once an imposing and feared figure, seemed to have withered in the large bed. His face was pale, marked by deep lines of pain. He opened his eyes when they entered, fixing them immediately on Iracema. "You came," he murmured, his weak voice a distant echo of the authoritarian roar she remembered. "I came," she responded simply. He made a weak gesture indicating that she should approach. Kawa remained at her side, protective, while Father Antonio positioned himself at the foot of the bed, his hands joined in silent prayer. "I have something for you," said the colonel with difficulty. He made a sign to his niece, who approached. "With a sealed envelope. Documents of the lands your father left." Iracema's eyes widened in shock. "My father didn't have lands." The colonel tried a bitter smile. "Yes, he did. A small lot on the borders of my farm. Your father refused to sell it to me even when he fell ill. After he departed, I convinced Donna Joanna to hide the existence of the property from you." A violent cough interrupted his confession. When he recovered, he continued, "The documents are all there. The land is legally yours. It always was." Iracema accepted the envelope with trembling hands, unable to completely process what she was hearing. A part of her past, stolen from her, was being returned at this unlikely moment. The colonel continued, each word seeming to cost him an immense effort. "There is more. In the last few weeks, I signed the transfer of a strip of land between my property and the APACHE village. It is a donation. Irrevocable." Kawan exchanged an astonished look with Iracema. "Why?" she asked, suspicious. The colonel closed his eyes for a moment. "Call it remorse, or fear of what I will find afterward. He made a vague gesture upward. The reason doesn't matter, it is done. Father Antonio approached. Colonel, there is time for forgiveness, for reconciliation with God and with those you have hurt. The old farmer looked at the priest with a mixture of skepticism and hope. That's why I asked you to come, Father. But first, he turned his gaze to Iracema. Do you forgive me, girl? The question hung in the air like smoke. Iracema felt the weight of years of fear, resentment, and pain. The man before her represented everything that was wrong in the world she had left behind. It would be easy to deny him forgiveness, to let him depart carrying the weight of his actions. But something in the fragility of that once powerful body touched a part of her that the years among the APACHE had